Okay, well, we still have some folks joining. I'm going to see if I can talk and hit admit all at the same time. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our discussion about double-digit increases in property valuations in Kansas. We're going to talk about the shocking rise in valuations, how to protest your valuation, and about telling elected officials to reduce mill rates so they can offset the valuation spikes. I'm Dave Trabert, CEO of Kansas Policy Institute, and our special guest tonight is attorney Linda Terrill with the Property Tax Law Group. Thanks for joining us, Linda. Let me start with this rapid rise in valuations. In your expert opinion, what's driving these increases? Are they legitimate? And is the rise in median sales price a valid reason to really increase everyone's valuation?
Okay, so let me start with what everyone would expect the lawyer response to be. The answer is kind of yes and no. What the county does is a mass appraisal, which is just a method to value a universe of properties quickly with identical data. So it's a starting point, but it isn't the end all be all. And in a perfect world, this mass appraisal number, which would be driven by sales predominantly from the prior year, a third would be right, a third would be too high, a third would be too low. But I'm always reminded of former budget director Jim Bibb, who said, averages are not very good. You could have 1 foot in a bucket of boiling water and 1 foot in a bucket of ice water, and your average temperature is okay, but you're uncomfortable as hell. And that's kind of where you are with the mass appraisal. The problem is that really the counties take it as gospel. It comes out of the computer, it must be correct. So what the appeal process does is give the taxpayer an opportunity to come in and say, hey, this data that you use to value all similar homes doesn't apply to me. And really, we need to probably change the law to make it clear that a mass appraisal is a starting point, but it shouldn't be admissible as evidence if you're challenging your valuation, which is the law in Missouri. And in Missouri, if you file an appeal, the mass appraisal document's inadmissible. And that would raise the caliber of the information from the other side. But I think right now, we had a hot market for a while. We had a demand that exceeded the number of housing starts, and it just bumped it up. But I think it's now leveled out. And so it's kind of up to everybody to see. But I know in my own instance, my house went up probably about 25%. So yeah, they are using these big sale numbers. They're happy. The county is. They're using these big sale numbers and all these sold properties that sold above asking, and trying to say everybody is in that boat. And I think clearly we're not.
So what about that rise in median sales price? That gets quoted a lot. Is that a valid reason to increase everyone's valuation?
No. Again, it's kind of like a starting point. Yes, we can see that there is a median increase or, over the year before, but it's still data. And, I always say if the data isn't applicable to you, then the fact that it's, everybody else went up is really irrespective of what your value did. So I think that if the county has nothing more than that, then you should file your appeal and argue. And I could say too, when you do look at the data from the county, they're probably on a home relying on the sales comparison approach. And they will then show you the comparables, and you can then determine if they're even remotely comparable to your property.
Okay, well, let's talk about that appeals process now. What options do homeowners have and to appeal their valuation? And what do you recommend they do to get ready for that appeal process?
So the good news is Kansas has a very taxpayer-friendly appeal process, which is not true nationwide. I know the Chamber and the Kansas Policy Institute have been driving forces behind making it easier to file your appeal. Right now, we're in the stage where you got your valuation notice, and you can just file your appeal to the county. Some counties you call it in, some you can go online and file, some you just fill paperwork out and mail it. And if you're under a tight deadline, then I recommend that maybe you drive it over. Now, after saying we have a taxpayer-friendly appeal process. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a taxpayer-friendly hearing necessarily. So here's what I suggest. Those appeals that are happening right now, you can file and the county will set a date for your hearing. It can be by phone, which is nice for a number of reasons. One thing I tell all of my homeowners, the law requires the county to go first in this little hearing. So make them do it. Make them tell you everything that they know about your house. They'll tell you about the comparables. They'll tell you about the number of rooms you have and, bedrooms, etc. Listen to that and, listen for errors, listen for descriptions. If they have you classified as an A+ house or whatever, then, those are the kind of things you should be listening for so that you can then correct them after they go through it. Now, if your county is online, and not all are, you can go on ahead of your hearing and get a lot of information if you look up your own property. They may show you the comparable sales. And one of the things I tell people again, in the sales comparison approach, particularly for Johnson County and some others that are online, they'll show you which houses they use to value yours and the adjustments they make. The number I tell people to look for is the very bottom line number, and it'll be a 2 or 3 digit number, and it's the comparability. So if the number was 1, then that meant that comparable sale is an exact duplicate of your house. If it exceeds 100, it's probably not very comparable, and you should be talking to them about, can't you find anything closer in comparability to my house that is sold? And then you can, of course, ask to see all their valuation documents, and they have to provide them to you. They can email them to you. And in fact, if you have a nice appraiser, he'll email them, or she'll email them to you while you're on the phone hearing. And then if you need more time to respond to the county, tell them you do. They'll give you more time. They'll say, okay, if for instance, let me give you an example. If they talk about your roof and you say, hey, I need a new roof, I just haven't replaced it yet, I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to afford to do it, but it's bad. Then they'll ask you how much it's going to cost. And if you don't know that, then say, you know what, can I have a week to get that information to you? And they will give it to you. So you don't feel like you have to solve it at the same moment that they're asking you. And then, of course, if you don't get relief, you can file under the Board of Tax Appeals. Now, I will say one of the changes that both the KPI and the state chamber endorsed and pushed was you are under no risk of having your valuation raised as a result of filing an appeal. And that is not true in a number of states. So you have virtually nothing to lose if you go in there and they explain to you and you feel like, well, maybe it is right, or maybe it's even low, then you don't have to worry about the county saying, you know what, I have your house valued for this, but I really think we missed something. If, for instance, let's say you say they have 4 bedrooms and you say, wait, I have 5, then they can't raise it. And they can't raise it at the Board of Tax Appeals. The only minor risk that you have is if you say too much, then maybe next year they'll raise it and correct it. But nonetheless, you can go in risk-free and learn everything that you want to know about your house value from the county at that level. Don't expect the county at the local level to give you very much, and you can go yourself. Our law requires or allows you to be represented by anybody, your neighbor, your real estate agent, your banker, it doesn't really matter, an attorney, tax consultant. So anybody is free to come in and help you. So it's a very taxpayer friendly process.
Well, Linda, you mentioned a couple of times the law that KPI helped drive. I just want to give our audience a little bit of a background on that. That was the Truth in Taxation Act that was passed in 2021. And it's already helping to reduce property tax, or at least minimize the size of the increase in many parts of Kansas. Very briefly, the law now says that it automatically reduces mill rates in each taxing authority, the city, the county, school district, fire district, whatever, so that the new valuations deliver the same dollar amount of property tax to that taxing authority. And that's why it's called the revenue neutral rate. It drops the rate so that it produces the same revenue. And then if elected officials want to take in just $1 more than they budgeted this year, they have to notify you of their intent. They actually send a letter to your home It will break out all the details for each taxing authority that you reside in. It tells you when they're going to hold a public hearing, so that you can go and tell them what you think about that. And then they have to vote on the entire tax increase they impose. So they can no longer get away with, at least honestly get away with, some of them I've seen still say it, but they can't get away with saying, oh, we didn't, we're holding the line, we didn't raise the mill rate. They voted in every case, if they're exceeding revenue neutral, they voted for the exact percentage tax increase that they're going to collect. Now, in 2021, about 1,900 taxing authorities in Kansas decided not to increase property tax. And last year, more than half decided not to increase the revenue neutral rates. It was about 52% in 2021. The actions taken in 2022 are, we still don't have all the data, but it's over 50%. But most cities and counties and school districts in the larger counties honestly ignored citizens' concerns, and they're still imposing, in some cases, some sizable tax increases. So, Linda, do you have any recommendations for taxpayers about communicating their concerns to elected officials?
So a lot of times clients will say to me, I think I know the so-and-so who's on the county commission, and I think I'll just call him and I'm not too concerned about it. And then they'll call me 2 weeks later and say, yeah, they didn't listen to me at all. So the truth is, I am really impressed with the progress that law has made, but much needs to be done, and not unnecessarily on the behalf of the taxpayers, but on the behalf of the elected people that are just not listening. I say sometimes that what I advise my clients is, you can call and here's what's going to happen. They're going to say, wow, that is awful. Well, we don't really employ the county appraiser, so we can't tell them what to do. And I feel your pain. But, the truth of the matter is, no, they don't. They don't. That's the bottom line. They need the values to be up. In the past, of course, what Dave was talking about was the phantom tax increases, when the tax base would go up 20% and they would do the same mill levy and then argue that they hadn't raised your taxes. Well, they did, but they just did it in a manner which was more difficult to track. So the law now helps all of us. I would recommend you still attend meetings, and that you still do contact your legislators. I know recently someone in my county, Johnson County, in my little neighborhood, whatever those things are, neighbors, someone complained about the amount of taxes or value that went up. And it's like, did anybody else's value go up $100,000? And it turns out that one of the county commissioners lives in my neighborhood. And she responded back with saying, it's not necessarily the value increases that are hurting you, it's how we're spending your money that is hurting you. And she then cited a specific example of that they had they spent, I think, $22,000, so I can't remember the number, meeting with a consultant about diversity and equality and something. And they had dinner at the Hereford House, and they paid for lunch, and maybe the staff time was $22,000, all to say, yeah, those things are good. That was the conclusion. It was good. I would have done that for a lot less money. But nonetheless, I think that is that the answer isn't always the value. The answer is the pressure that people put, or legislators and county officials put on the property tax. And people just need to call them out. You just need to pay attention. I know my county is online, and you can watch them every week that they're meeting. And then I think dropping a note and signing your name and saying where you live, that you're in their district, will help. But nonetheless, they still are there to run the government and spend your money. So I don't mean to sound too
and they
negative,
do that quite well.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's great advice, Linda. Don't wait for the R&R hearing that'll come up sometime in August or September. Go to the monthly board meetings, go to the city, county, school district, go to monthly board meetings and tell them how their past actions, how their past property taxes have impacted you. Now, resist the temptation to yell at them. They may deserve it, but you have to be the adult in the room.
True.
Because if you're not, then it's easy for them to dismiss you. Be firm, but be civil. Tell stories that you'd want media to repeat, like how you're struggling to pay your property tax. What choices are you having to make? I know last year at the Johnson County R&R hearing, there were several people who said, we're having to choose between prescriptions and taxes, or food and taxes. It's crazy. So do you know any people who had to or are about to sell their homes because they can't afford the tax? Those are stories that media is more likely to retell, but you can also remind them of what they've done in the past. You can go to one of the websites we operate, kansasopengov.org, and you can see how much each county and the larger cities have raised taxes going back to 1997, and you can compare that to population and inflation changes. Politicians need to hear a lot of complaints, and they need to hear them consistently. Get your friends and neighbors to speak at these monthly meetings. Go on eNeighbors, like Linda referenced. Go wherever you can, social media. Write letters to the editor. Inundate media with concerns and your emotional stories. And always remember, be the adult in the room. We've seen it works. We've seen elected officials change their minds at the revenue neutral hearing. I know there was one, I think it was the Lansing School District, went into the hearing last year prepared to raise taxes by 8%. After hearing a large volume of complaints, they decided to hold the revenue neutral rate. That's amazing. That shows you what can happen. So protest often, protest loudly, but always be the adult in the room. Linda, any final thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, one thing I should have mentioned earlier, if you missed your the valuation just came out, you had 30 days to appeal. If you missed that one, you can pay them under protest in December, and that gets you the same hearing, the same process, exactly the same. And if you missed that one, if you pay in half in December and half the following May, so in May of 2024, you can pay your second half under protest. So that's what I mean by a taxpayer friendly. You have 3 options to get your appeal in front of the county. Now, once you start one, you have to stick with it, but at least you have 3, which is way more than, any other. And also, bring any kind of evidence you want. If you're in person, pictures help a ton. So if you have certain things you want to talk to them about, whether it's, exterior part of your house or interior, give them pictures, give them estimates, and help.
They'd sell it for that.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, I tell this people all the time, it doesn't really matter how much it went up. What you need to be sure about is if that number is more than you believe you could sell your house for, then you need to be in front of the county appraiser arguing at that. Right. Because the issue is really, what is it worth? And with homes, it's pretty simple to get somebody to help you. And sometimes your neighbor's a real estate agent, they'll help you. They'll tell you what's good or, number or bad number. And that's impressive considering it's specific to your house. When you think about mass appraisal is about everybody, but your information is about your own house. And then you should see some success.
Yeah. Well, Linda, thanks for that. And thanks again for joining us tonight. We wanted to keep this brief, so we're not going to be taking any questions at this one like we've done in some of the other meetings that we go a little bit longer, but you can keep up with these developments on property taxes issues at kansaspolicy.org and at sentinelks.org. We've recorded this session and it'll be posted on our Facebook page probably sometime tomorrow. So tell your friends if they missed it, they can go there. If you like it, send it off to them and recommend they take a look at it. Linda, thanks again. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Have a good evening.
Good night.